This is Outside of New York. In-depth discussions with members of the art world who live and work outside of New York. And here's your host, Craig Gould.
Spencer Evans is a Dallas-based artist who uses bold colors and dynamic gestures to create portraits that question the African-American identity. Originally from Houston, he earned a BFA from the University of Missouri and an MFA from the University of Texas at Arlington. Evans drew critical praise last year for his first solo show at Dallas's Conduit Gallery entitled I Am Because We Are. The series was the product of research to explore the differences between Black Americans and Nigerian Africans. Examining his ancestral lineage, which he traced to Nigeria and Cameroon, the artist worked with the Nigerian Baptist Theological Seminary and Bowen University to engage on-site interviews in Nigeria. The discussions focused on identity and social constructs, looking for differences between Nigerians and the millions of African descendants living in the United States. In the end, Evans encountered a shift of his own point of view as he discovered many similarities between the Nigerians he met and the Black Americans he knew at home. This shift became the basis for his visual exploration of the topic. I recently sat down with Spencer at his studio in Dallas, where we discussed growing up in Houston, playing college football, understanding one's identity, code switching, and challenging preconceptions.
Well, actually, Jerome's particular, his studio flooded, and he lost probably half of his work was damaged. And this happened 2 months before their opening.
Oh, man.
And so they had to push the opening back.
Right.
And so that's one thing I thought about when this happened. I was like, oh, well, luckily I don't have a show coming in 2 months. But, you just got to make up. You got to come back. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. And so, hey, man, I appreciate you being willing to sit down, take time out of a Saturday.
Of course.
So you're originally from Houston?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And so, what was that like growing up in Houston?
Houston is interesting. Growing up there, you take certain things for granted that you don't notice until you leave.
Right. So that could be said just about for any place.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So with Houston, very diverse. Mm-hmm. Very diverse, and there's because of its diversity, there's like a lot of channels for everything.
Right.
And growing up in Houston, like I said, you take it for granted because you'll have friends that are of whatever demographic.
Right.
And like this idea of understanding, depending on where you grow up and who you're around, this thing of understanding and acceptance, you think like, this is a normal thing, right? This is how that works. And it wasn't until I moved to Missouri and for undergrad that I realized that, it's really, it's not this way. And there are people who, when it comes to understanding, it's not there,
right? And
then prejudgment comes from that. But so Houston was great. I loved it. Spacious,
yeah.
There's you get this idea of like when you start thinking in terms of spectrums. Mm-hmm. I think of Houston as like a great example of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you think Dallas compares to Houston?
Dallas. Okay, so. Now I think of it in the context of like my career, I would say.
Right.
And so I look at it as still developing quickly. Like there's a lot that's established, and like there's a lot of cool things that are happening here. I definitely look at Dallas as like certain places are a bit cleaner when it has to do with like downtown and certain. So I love that about it. But when it comes to there seems to not be much like gray area there. It's like. Either you're this or you're that right now, it feels like. And when it comes to this development, one thing I've noticed is when there's something that's new, the idea of making something new, something that's old will get completely torn away and built on top of.
Right.
And so that's one thing I noticed from Dallas. But
that's really interesting. And downtown Dallas really doesn't have much historic architecture at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it's part of it.
Yeah. So that idea is pretty interesting when you think about kind of like movement and going forward. It's like, will this place be a completely different place in 20, 30 years? Will you, if you were to leave and come back,
sure,
would you recognize?
Yeah. And there's always the question in Dallas of is Dallas proper going to be able to remain relevant as the suburbs grow, right?
Yes.
And that, and then there's whole questions of revitalization and, how do you do that and how do you, I guess there are those questions just about in every community, like how do you revitalize areas without people feeling like they're being pushed out or, gentrification, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so, like you said, it's kind of, it winds up being very binary. Like, there's not, people don't come in and figure out a way to, integrate. It's like kind of pushing.
Right, exactly. It's, yeah. And it's, it's kind of, you see power. That's one of the things it's like either you see or you feel power. Like you can feel like the result of power from being here and kind of seeing the way things get changed.
Right. Or even just like where we're sitting in this studio.
Yeah.
We're right on the edge of where things are being pushed.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Because we're, 10 minutes away from South Oak Cliff or like Bishop Arts or North Oak Cliff.
Right.
And Bishop Arts. Or what they call Bishop Arts District now.
Right.
So yeah, you really get to see that because you'll see one thing and something that's completely different, like just a block away.
Yeah.
So that's something. And I had some friends who have who grew up here, and I have some friends who just moved here, and friends who came here as adults who have been here for maybe 20-some years and talk about how things have changed.
Right.
So that's really interesting to pay attention to.
So was art a big deal in your home growing up, or when did you get the bug?
I'm 3 years old when everybody's an artist, really. So, I guess it turned into a bug for me because I saw it as a way to tell stories.
Right.
The first drawing I can recall came from being in preschool where our teacher asked us to draw a picture that told our classmates what we did that past weekend. Right. And so I drew a scene that my parents and we had gone to Galveston that weekend, and I didn't think of it while doing it, but I think like after the fact, I saw, I don't know how I got my hands on these old drawings, but this happened years ago. I saw it. It was a drawing of the beach, but not in the beach not the beach that most people would think of. Right. It had to do with like texture. Wow. And I was thinking like, what this 3-year-old was thinking about, because that's what I was, and I had to link it to a lot of things because, I obviously wear corrective lenses. I started wearing glasses at 5. So a lot of my early drawings didn't really have to do with like what I was seeing. It had to do with like the feeling and like the texture.
It's almost like you were visually impaired.
There was a sensory kind of like motif to most of the drawings. So I guess from there I was caught up on storytelling and finding a visual way to tell that story. And I was blessed to have parents to not tell me that, okay, you're wasting your time doing this. So I would say that in that sense, I wouldn't say I grew up in an artistic household, but it was definitely, I would say, expressively friendly. Right. I would say that, yeah.
Right on. And so you wind up going to Missouri. How did you wind up choosing Mizzou?
Football, actually.
Awesome.
I went there to play football. And, I knew I wanted to, pursue art. Yeah. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I had met an artist who told me, I was a junior in high school, and met an artist who told me, you can go to school for this, you know this, right? And I was like, oh. And so I went and did that. And so I was doing that in football. Sure. And then it came to a crossroads where I had to choose one or the other. Right. And I chose art, obviously. Yeah. But so that's how that.
All right, so let's dive in there. So, what position did you play?
I played cornerback.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow, Mizzou has a pretty interesting tradition of quarterback play.
Corner.
Oh, corner.
Yeah,
I was
corner.
like, all right.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, right.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry.
No, you fine.
And I was thinking Chase Daniels. I even knew like when I played college football way back when. One of my coaches, his son, wound up being a starting quarterback at Mizzou eventually, but that was like 20 years. His name is Corby Jones. But yeah. And so, but cornerback. All right. Mm-hmm. So you were the shutdown corner.
I tried to be. Yeah. I played safety in high school. And then because of my every school that I was being recruited by or even talking to,
right,
they all had this idea like, you'll play corner and when you come here. And I was like, what? I don't know what. But
right.
Actually, Chase and I came in the same class.
Right on.
But cornerback. And so that was interesting in and of itself. It was something that I didn't know too much about, and I was too busy with the idea of seeing everything as a safety. I was playing free safety, so I was like, I'm surveying the field. I'm the last line of defense, so that was it was an interesting learning experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so, so there was some point in there where you walked away from it.
Yes.
And so, what was that like? Junior year or what?
Actually, sophomore year.
Yeah.
Because so one of the things that they do, I don't know if they still do it now.
Yeah.
But they definitely did it when I was there. Is when you report to school, they link you up with the academic advisor for the athletic department. And they kind of make it so that this is what you came here to do. Like, you're a student athlete, but like, let's set you up so that you can thrive at both.
Right.
And so most of us were being set up as agriculture majors or hotel and restaurant management.
Is that? Do you have an opinion on why that was the case?
Oh yeah, I do. So it was more so for you to remain eligible to play, as opposed to you, for one, getting a degree that you could use or were passionate about once your time there as a football player was done. Mm-hmm. And I come from, my dad was in education for over 30 years on all sides of it, from a teacher to an assistant principal to the actual principal, then to working as an executive principal, and then working with TEA as an educational consultant. So he always, he didn't like push it on us, but he would show us like these are the benefits of education. So from there, I had this idea that he didn't even have to tell me to do. I was like, okay, but I want to be an art major still. I want to, get my BFA. And they were fine with it. And so I met with my advisor. So there started to be an issue after my second semester when I realized that from a meeting with my advisor that I was getting behind in my major, because being on the football team, you can't take classes after 1 o'clock.
Right.
Because, and it's kind of a weird thing about how the importance they put on bodies of college athletes, where we had to be weighed every day. Yeah. Take your weight. You know this.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Every day. And so you need to be there, get dressed, get weighed, and then be ready for your position meeting and then a team meeting. And so getting a BFA, you have to take studio classes. Right. You have to take this 60 hours of studio courses you need to be taking. Right. And so after having only been able to take classes in the morning, knowing that studio classes run until the afternoon and some into the evening, I was behind in my major. Right. And so the advisor was like, there's one or two things you can do. Right. You can decide this or that. Yeah. But both is going to be kind of hard unless you plan on being here for an extra 2 years. Right. So. Yeah. It was hard for a second.